Vanishing House by Bernard Capes. My grandfather, said the banjo, drank dog's nose. My father drank dog's nose, and I drink dog's nose. If that ain't heredity, there's no virtue in the board schools. Ah, said the piccolo, you're always the boasting of your science, and so, I suppose, your son will drink dog's nose too? No, retorted the banjo, with a rumbling laugh like wind in the bunghole of an empty cask, for I ain't got none. The family ends with me, which is a pity, for I'm a full stop to be proud on. He was an enormous, ton-bellied person, a mere mound of expressionless flesh, whose size alone was an investment that paid a perpetual dividend of laughter. When, as with the rest of his company, his face was blackened, it looked like a specimen coal on a pedestal in a museum. There was a Christmas company in the good intent, and the sanded tap room with its trestle tables and sprigs of holly stuck under sooty beams reeked with smoke and the steam of hot gin and water. How much could you put down a night, Jack? Said a little grinning man by the door. Why, said the banjo, enough to lay the dustiest ghost as ever walked. Could you now, said the little man. Ah, said the banjo, chuckling, there's nothing like setting one spirit to lay another, and there I could give you proof number 2 of heredity. What? Don't you go for to say you ain't ever seen a ghost? Haven't I? What are you whispering about, you blushful chap there by the winder? I was only remarking, sir, 'twere snawing like the devil. Is it? Then the devil has been misjudged these 1890-odd years. But did you ever see a ghost? Said the little grinning man, pursuing his subject. No, sir. No, I didn't, sir, mimicked the banjo, saving in the coffee grounds with my grandfather and his cup seed one, which brings us to number 3 in the matter of heredity. Give us the story, Jack, said the bones, whose acute shins were extemporizing a rattle on their own account before the fire. Well, I don't mind, said the fat man. It's seasonable, and I'm a seasonable man, like the blessed plum pudding I am. And the more burnt brandy you set about me, the richer and headier I'll go down. You'd be a jolly old pudding to digest, said the piccolo. You blow your aguation into the pipe, and the sealing wax stops, said his friend. He drew critically at his churchwarden a moment or so, leaned forward, empties his glass into the capacious receptacles, and gives his stomach a shift as if to accommodate it to its new burden. Proceeded as follows. Music and malt is my national inheritance. My grandfather blew his dog's nose and drank his clarinet like an artist, and my father... What did you say your grandfather did? Asked the piccolo. He played the clarinet. You said he blew his dog's nose. Don't be an ass, Fred, said the banjo, aggrieved. How the blazes could a man blow his dog's nose unless he muzzled it with a handkerchief and twisted its tail? He played the clarinet, I say, and my father played the musical glasses, which was a form of harmony genial to him. Amongst us we've piped out a good long century. Ah, we have. For all I look such a baby, bursting on sops and spoon meat. What, said the little man by the door? You don't include them cocked hatses in your experience? My grandfather wore them, sir. He wore a play-acting coat, too, and buckles to his shoes, where he'd got any, and he had a friend or two make permanency of weights, only they called them according to the season, and got their profit going from house to house, principally in the country, and discourse and music at the low rate of whatever they could get it for. Ain't you come to the ghost, Jack? Said the little man hungrily. All in course, sir. Well, gentlemen, it was hard times pretty often with my grandfather and his friends, as you may suppose, and never so much as when they had to trudge it cross country, with the nor'easter buzzing in their teeth, and the snow piled on their cocked hats like lemon sponges and entry dishes. The rewards, I've heard him say, for he lived to be 90 nevertheless, was poor compensation for the drifts, and the influenza, and the broken chilblains, and now and again they get a fair skinful of liquor from a jolly squire, as set 'em up for boggarts mended with new broomsticks. Ho-ha, broke in a hurdle maker in a corner, and then, regretting the publicity of his merriment, put his fingers bashfully to his stubble lips. Now, said the banjo, if it's a particular night and a particular skinful, then I'm going to tell you. And that night fell dark, and the skinful were took 100 years ago this December, as I'm Jack Puddin'. He paused a moment for effect before he went on. They were down in the southwest country, which they little knew, and were anigh in Winchester City, or I should have been. But they got muzzled on the ungodly downs, and before they guessed, they was off the track. My good hat, there they was, as lost in the snow as 3 nutshells a sinking into a hasty pudding. Well, they wandered around pretty confident at first, but getting madder and madder as every sense of their bearings slipped from them, and the bitter cold took their vitals, so as they saw nothing but a great winding sheet stretched abroad to wrap their dead carcasses in. At last my grandfather, he stopped and pulled himself together with an awful face and says, We're Christmas pie for the carrying on crows if we don't prove ourselves human. Let's fetch our pipes and blow out our trouble into 'em." So they stood together, like as if they was before a house, and they played Kate of Aberdare, mighty dismal and flat, for their fingers froze to the keys. Now I tell you, they hadn't climbed over the first stave when there came a skirl of wind and a spindrift of snow as almost took them off their feet. And on the going down of it, Jem Sloke, as played the hot boy, dropped the reed from his mouth and called out, "Sakes alive, if we fools ain't been standing outside a gentleman's gate all the time and not knowing it." You might have knocked 3 of them down with barley straw as they stared and fell into a low, enjoying laugh. For they was standing not 6 foot from a tall iron gate in a stone wall, and behind these was a great house showing, out dim with the windows all lighted up. "Lord," chuckled my grandfather, "to think of the tricks of beggar's country. But as we're here, we'll go on and give 'em a taste of our quality." They put new heart into the next movement, as you may guess, and they hadn't fair started on it when the door of the house swung open, and down the shaft of light that shot out as far as the gate, there come a smiling young gal with a tray of glasses in her hands. Now she come to the bars, and she took and put a glass through, not saying nothing, but inviting someone to drink with a silent laugh. Did anyone take the glass? Of course he did, you'll be thinking, and you'll be thinking wrong. Not a man of the 3 moved. They was stuck like stone, and their lips was gone the color of slow berries. Not a man took the glass, for why? The moment the gal presented it, each saw the face of a thing looking out of the window over the porch, and the face was hideous beyond words, and the shadow of it, and the light behind stretched out and reached to the gal and made her hideous too. At last my grandfather gave a groan and put out his hand as he did. The face went, and the gal was beautiful to be seen again. "Death of the devil," said he. "It's one or both. Either way, I prefer him not to cold." He drank off half the glass, smacked his lips, and stood staring a moment. "Dear, dear," said the gal in a voice like falling water, "you've drunk blood, sir." My grandfather gave a yell, slapped the rest of the liquor in the faces of his friends, and threw the cup against the bars. It broke with a noise like thunder, and at that he up with his hands, fell full length into the snow. There was a pause. The little man by the door was twisting nervously in his chair. "He came to, of course. He came to?" said he at length. "He come to," said the banjo solemnly, "in the bitter break of dawn, that is. He come to as much as himself as ever was." He gave a squiggle, lifted his head, and there was he and his friends a-lying on the snow of the high downs. And the house and the gal? Nary a sign of either, sir, but just the sky and the white stretch and one other thing. And what was that? A stain of red sunk in where the cup had spilt. There was a second pause, and the banjo blew into his bowl of pipe. "They cleared out of that neighborhood double quick, you'll bet," said he. But my grandfather was never the same man again. His face took purple, while his friends only remained splashed with red, same as birthmarks. And I tell you, if he ever ventured upon Kate Aberdare, his cheeks swelled up to the red of his clarinet, like as a blue plum on a stalk, and 40 years after, he died of what they call solution of blood to the brain. "And you can't have better proof than that," said the little man. "That's what I say," said the banjo. "Next player, gentlemen, please."